War is part of our human experience, but the way we fight it is changing. Technology is defining the future of warfare.
It's changing the way we think about making decisions in warfare, providing capabilities that were previously unreachable.
Lessons from the past inform the future. At every technological leap redraws the battle lines we once knew. Technology was once a spear. Today, it is a cyber attack.
The amount of interconnected technology has fundamentally transformed the operational environment.
Familiar domains grow increasingly complex, and the race to dominate the ultimate high ground has begun.
In the same way we think about sea power, we need to start thinking about a strategy for space.
As machines take the reins, the speed of warfare accelerates ever faster. Technology has always shaped war.
Evolution has always happened. In war and in society, it will continue to happen.
War has always shaped humanity.
The US Navy is in the process of acquiring a series of drone warships, which are not small boats.
DARPA's Sea Hunter, launched in 2016, is one of these. Capable of speeds of up to 27 knots with a transoceanic cruising range, Sea Hunter is a fully autonomous anti-submarine warfare ship.
Medium-sized warships, which are uncrewed or optionally crewed, and can carry out most of the tasks that you would expect a manned warship to carry out, but do it in a much higher threat environment or in an environment where they're working in concert with a crewed ship. AIs give a couple of advantages. One, they don't involve having a single headquarters, which can be targeted or disrupted, or its communications can be jammed, but rather the AI processing power will be sitting on every individual platform, so it'll be distributed amongst every asset in a drone swarm or every vehicle in a ground formation.
The advantages that AI presents have set the stage for a global AI arms race. In warfare, the military that adopts new technology, that adapts new technology, always has an advantage, even if it's momentary.
It's about 3500 BC. Some metal worker came up with the copper mace. It's, a stick with a ball of copper on the end. Not exactly what we would call high tech. The copper mace revolutionized war. Before you knew it, the people who had the copper mace at first, they went on to victory. But the people who were in their neighborhood who were fighting, the technology quickly spread, and before you knew it, everybody had copper maces.
In future conflicts, artificial intelligence is the copper mace, the key to the next revolution. Though some, even those at the cutting edge of the technology industry, remain cautious.
Elon Musk, for example, has been one of the vocal advocates warning of the danger of AI-enhanced robots defeating the humankind. He also stated that if one group or a small company of people will be capable of, at some point, developing a general AI, they will be the one to govern the rest of the world.
In 2020, the US released their Department of Defense budget proposal. In it, they requested close to $1 billion to fund artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as almost $4 billion to fund unmanned and autonomous projects. As militaries around the world hone in on the potential of artificial intelligence, visions of a first wave of robotic combatants being sent across a kill zone, or many small killer drones swarming a target, come to mind. But that is not the immediate future of warfare.
And to a non-educated or a non-professional person looking at a future military in, say, 2030, it may not look superficially that much different from what we see now, but it may have precision and firepower and surveillance reach and processing speed and cyberkinetic capabilities that you would only dream of now.
It'll require a different rethink on how we fight, with perhaps additional new technologies at the periphery. But the sunk cost in what we already have is not going to go away for 50 years. So we're going to have to learn how to play with what we already have.
The fusion of intelligence and information with opportunity through a machine that can understand and process information at a rate far quicker than humans will be decisive in achieving military advantage in the next big war.
An event or series of events in 2018 illustrate the controversies around developing AI for weapon systems. The United States Department of Defense put out a call to industry offering funding for a company or companies to develop technology that would enable, say, a drone to recognize people or items on the ground, categorize them, classify them, and potentially target them, all without human input.
Partnering with Google, the U.S. Department of Defense sought to improve the efficiency of information processing. Project Maven was born.
So in the context of Project Maven, based on the collective experiences of US military operations since the attacks of September 11, 2001, and the advent of drones, specifically in the context of intelligence collection and surveillance, the product of all that was a potentially unlimited amount of full motion video, much of it high definition, that still needed to be processed by humans in terms of being able to differentiate across that motion video between friend and foe.
It's cognitive overload, really, is the situation we're living in now. The drones are collecting not just imagery, but all kinds of SIGINT. So you just have this massive pile of data coming in 24/7 from the aerial collection platforms, and there is no way to process it all. They are trying to adapt the artificial intelligence programs so that they can readily sift out the useful bits and do the work that the human analysts have done.
At the operational level, the ability to process data at large scale, at speed, really helps in areas of intelligence and logistics and operations.
Maven sought to provide an algorithm to assign to each object. A computer could distill one algorithm, which could be a car, from another algorithm, which could be a person.
Which is about developing facial recognition software, autonomous facial recognition software.
So what might take hours, if not weeks, of analysis across hundreds or thousands of hours of continuous looped video could instead be filtered in a millisecond. That's Project Maven.
But an existential crisis was brewing within the corridors of Google. Word was out that Google was involved in an AI program with the Pentagon. Google workers were concerned that their work interpreting video imagery using AI would contribute to improving drone strike targeting.
3,000 Google employees wrote to the senior management and said, "We are not happy that Google is involved with the US Department of Defense Project Maven."
And so you can see now why AI is so attractive a proposition for the military, but also for countries want to insist on using the state as a way to monitor and surveil their own population. It provides a similar sort of opportunity. So if you could have an algorithm for every human being in a country when they're born, you could conceivably track them through an AI system in the physical sense for the rest of their life. Orwellian, but true. And certainly AI could provide the facility for that going forward.
Deciding not to renew their contract with the U.S. Department of Defense, Google updated their previous motto, "Don't be evil," to "Do the right thing." Before Project Maven, and before drones scoured the ground below for intelligence, It was the aircraft of the First World War that were initially used for reconnaissance missions. Flying over combat zones, photographing their enemy's position, and mapping the zigzag of trenches below. The reconnaissance pilots of earlier wars also realized another advantage of being in the sky above their target: distance.
From sword fighting to spear throwing to firing arrows, right through to artillery, then aerial bombing, and now to drones that can be piloted across continents. There has been this physical distancing between the shooter and the target.
Killing from a distance, though, has always bred complications for the soldier. Future warfare combatants won't be flying low over trenches. They could very well be operating drones from a control room in Las Vegas, Nevada, engaging with personnel in another state or country, following orders from a base anywhere on the planet.
I don't think anyone wants a situation where we are sort of very emotionally detached and not thinking and reflecting on our actions and just going to war and pressing buttons.
And the term PlayStation killer was brought about early in the 21st century to describe this expectation that it would be somehow just like playing a game.
It's always the notion that it's just going to be pressing a button and going back and sitting on your couch, right? And you've blown something up.
In the 1920s, the world's major powers came together to discuss banning the dropping of bombs from aircraft. They were concerned that killing from a distance was dehumanizing and unethical.
The physical distance has got vast, but the psychological, visual distance, the emotional distance, has shrunk right back down to World War I or even pre-World War I levels. I call it the distance paradox. Physical distance has grown, visual, emotional, psychological distance has shrunk right back down to that of the early days of war.
If you look at the use of drones and drone footage, some operators have never been closer. They're seeing things in HD.
Psychological trauma is rife throughout the military sector. Drone operators are not exempt from it.
At the end of that shift, go home to their families and try to conduct normal life for 12 hours with a partner, with children, with friends, before going back and doing the same the next day.
In future conflicts, artificial intelligence might provide an opportunity for human emotion to be taken out of a kill equation if authority to make that kill was delegated to a machine.
So whether it is desirable to remove human emotions from the battlefield or not through the use of technologies is an interesting question.
People assume that the fact that certain actions are delegated means there's an emotional distance or psychological distance.
The responsibility for the actions of machines cannot be delegated to machines, but will remain with humans.
If debate in past wars focused on the ethics of dropping bombs from a distance, today's debate concerns embedding ethics into artificially intelligent machines.
Let me give you a real human example. A police officer may have rules which prohibit him or her from diving into a river to rescue a member of the public who is drowning. The result of that rule might be that a civilian dies. How do you program that ability to flick between one ethical approach and another ethical approach in machines? I think the ability to do that is one of the things that defines us as human beings. And I'm not convinced that a machine, any time in my lifetime, will be able to do that in the same way as a human. And there's one further dimension, and that is, I think if a human gets it wrong, policeman jumps in the river and drowns, or somebody like that makes such a decision, I think the general public will be understanding of human error. But if a computer is making a decision which costs a human life, even if a human would make exactly the same decision and cost the exact same human life, I suspect culturally, part of being human is we will accept the human error before we will accept the robot error.
We want to interrogate the legal and ethical and moral elements of that construct and make sure that it does actually fit with our values and with who we are and how we want to operate in the space.
When autonomous systems act and maybe target whether civilians or combatants, who is responsible for the consequences, whether positive or negative consequences? The question is whether we want these technologies to make decisions which are matters of life and death and are ethically loaded. Some people may say ethics is a purely human affair, and that's why humans should always be in control of technologies.
I think if we can have this constant dialogue, then technology will hopefully evolve at the same time or only fractionally ahead of the ethical issues, ethical concerns, and legal concerns.
It's important for us to think about the ways in which our existing ethical principles can still be applied, even in worlds that are quite different from the world in which we live now.
If the legal considerations and the ethical considerations, which is about is it right rather than is it legal, we're more likely, I hope, as a human race, to work our way through in a way that does not become overwhelmingly harmful or out of control.
There's some who would say dignity matters no matter what. That's the primary objective. And therefore, if a machine is killing and there's not a human operator in the loop, that's undignified.
By removing the human emotion, we are going to lose both of them. We're going to lose all the negative emotions, such as fear, but also emotions which could also be creating positive cultures, such as empathy.
Part of that dilemma between accepting human error and machine error, I think, are human emotions like empathy. Because if I make a grave error that costs a life, no matter how painful it is for the family, and I may even go to court and jail depending on what I've done, if I have a full range of human emotions, then it's likely that I'm going to suffer in some way internally. Guilt, conscience. But a machine does not have guilt or conscience or empathy. Those factors are some of the reasons why people will not accept a machine error quite so readily as they would accept a human error.
The fear that artificially intelligent, weaponized machines, robots, will rise up and take over is as palpable today as it was in the age of antiquity. When Greek mythology told of the bronze automaton Telos, created by Greek gods to protect a Cretan princess.
Science fiction and popular culture has influenced discussions around AI and particularly drones for at least the better part of a decade that I've been personally involved in public debate around this. And early on in the debate, some years ago, the accusations were, well, drones, they're just one step to these automatic killing machines, and people who've seen science fiction films like The Terminator or other early films like that have argued that it is inevitable that machines will take control of themselves, they'll have no regard for human life, and they will just be on the run, on the loose, causing devastation.
It's funny in a way, we don't have many actual fielded systems to point to, or the ones that we do, the implementation of autonomy is not readily visible, or it's not all that exciting. So the reference set that people pull from is what they see on TV or in the movies. And that can be scary and exciting, but it's really often unfounded.
Groups such as the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots have pushed for United Nations action to ban the development, production, and use of lethal autonomous weapons systems. Formed in 2012, their stance has been that fully autonomous weapons cross a moral threshold, and that it is important to retain human control over the use of force. In 2015, an open letter from the group warned of the dangers of lethal autonomous weapons, stating that if any major military power pushes ahead with AI weapon development, a global arms race is virtually inevitable. Over 4,000 AI and robotics researchers signed the letter, as did public figureheads of the scientific community, such as Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, and Steve Wozniak.
I have news for you. The robots are not taking over the world.
There are those who would definitely advocate for an outright ban on any kind of robotic technology. I look at history. In the 1920s, the major powers of the world came together to discuss the banning of bombing from aircraft, but it didn't happen.
It would be similar to saying we should ban locomotive engines, right? Because we know that in the future they'll be used to transport troops all over Europe and to do all kinds of horrible things in war.
And I think there will not be a ban on what's called killer robots for the same reason, because they are militarily useful and they are definitely economically useful if you take the civilian applications. And so I'm doubtful about a ban. So the best thing is, how do we limit the harms, both in war and in peace? My big worry would be that technologists simply rush ahead, develop, frankly, barbaric capabilities, and then think, oh, should we constrain this in some way?
It's hard. Testing and evaluate these systems are challenging. So I don't think we'd want to use a system that we couldn't evaluate to some level of confidence. And then there's the notion of trust that to me is one that's more psychological or emotional. We trust the adoption of these systems into our lives, or we have operators who trust that they're going to develop relationships. If you look at the human-machine teaming, how that relationship develops, it's about trust, about like, I believe this system's going to behave the way it did in the previous times I interacted with it.
In a military context, artificial intelligence is all about controlled precision, the antithesis of robots going rogue.
But in reality, you want to maintain control, and commanders have no interest really in losing control of how they conduct operations. That's a big misconception, that AI is about losing control. I think you can have autonomy in a system that actually is not about you losing control, but actually maintaining more control maybe.
Militaries have a term called command and control, and that's literally what it is. It is the attempt to control complexity, to control violence, to achieve an end. In many ways, one of the ironies of this larger debate is an assumption by various campaigns or groups that want to ban AI-enabled weapon systems. They have this ingrained assumption that militaries want to have an uncontrollable capability, which really just doesn't make any sense to folks who actually work with the military. There's a desire and a strong push to maintain effective control, because that's how you achieve your political ends.
What is warfare? Is it still the classic definition of blood being shed, people being killed, and humans fighting, intimately and personally with each other? Or is it a more broader understanding of the use of autonomous systems fighting in what I would call a robotics engagement zone?
We sort of imagine, war-fighting robots, right? It's clear that lots of people might have emotional, but possibly also reasoned ethical arguments for why that would be problematic. But that is not the AI of the present. That's the AI of some future that may or may not come to be.
In terms of where war is headed in the future, certain things will remain the same. People will still be central in war, but there will be more technology.
Artificial intelligence is coming, but I don't see it as a silver bullet. It's not the panacea. We're just going to have to become very clever and think much harder in how we leverage these new technologies with the old to come up with a fighting system that provides us with what we need, but also know that as soon as we deploy it, within days, it's going to be obsolete and we're going to have to do it all over again.
Artificial intelligence is part of the emerging revolutionary technologies that are transforming future warfare. That transformation will be profound. The character of war forever altered.
The fourth industrial revolution really is the hyper-connectivity that is being fostered through society, through commerce, through military institutions. Disruptive technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, robotics, Generation 2 space-based capabilities, material sciences, synthetic technologies, are very much changing not just the nature of national security activities and military operations, but they're changing the globe. Just as we saw in the first industrial revolution where steam changed the world, these technologies literally are changing the world around us, and they're changing the world at a pace that we have not seen for a very long time.
Change is coming. It will be driven by artificial intelligence. It is up to humanity to keep pace with it, so that together we decide our future.
The big challenge and the big lesson is, if there is to be more technology, if there's to be more artificial intelligence, that we need to keep the human in there somewhere, because without the human in war, it truly becomes inhuman. And that is a future that we should all want to avoid.